Hi, everyone. So chapter 4 talks a little bit about audiences, and we'll think about some of the ways that marketing campaigns and messaging can get audience attention, um, you know, based on a variety of different factors. So when we think about audiences and when we think about why we should consider our audiences, there are a variety of reasons for why we should think about who is consuming the content that we are creating, who is looking at those advertisements, who is going to act after seeing that message. And so it's you really can't just put one message out there, tailor it based on the features of maybe a social media platform or a mass medium of some kind and hope for the best, right? That today the messaging really has to be curated, it has to be relevant. It has to do more than just sort of explain the features of your product or service. Audiences really want to feel like they're being spoken to, right? That these products are being marketed to them. And so, these are just some of the reasons why you would want to think about those audiences in your marketing campaigns, right? That if we target our messages, which we've talked about in this class and in other classes, um, it allows for if when you think about your target audience, you're able to then create those tailored messages and those products, right? We now have the algorithm, which on social media does help kind of send product advertisements to people who are most likely going to buy them or be interested in them. Um, but even thinking about the strategies of the message itself, right? What kinds of colors are most effective? If you have spokespeople or influencers, who are the best ones for the job? And how do they also resonate with your audiences? So knowing some of these things, right? Knowing the psychographics, the demographics, the behavioral information, attitudes, values, etc., can allow you to make those deeper connections to get that message most effectively to your audiences. Um, and it's a worthwhile venture for any company to sit down and think about who is maybe interacting with my content or who buys our products, because that is when you see that the efficiency of your message, right? That if you put something out there for the targeted audience of 35 to 50-year-olds who live in this area of New Jersey, and you find that sales or engagement are increasing in that demographic, then you've efficiently catered your message to that specific audience. And if you're putting money and time and effort into that, of course you're going to want to see that happen, right? You're going to want to see the ROI, or the return on your investment, um, come back as big as it can be, right? To get that good return on the time that you spent creating that content, the budget, right? The money that you spent on posting those ads or paying people to create those ads. So those are the things that always need to be considered as you are thinking about those audiences. Um, is your message effective, right? As we've said before, different audiences have different preferences, how they like to engage with the information that they're receiving, how they prefer to just spend their time. Because if you have audiences that are more likely to watch TV versus scrolling on social media, then you're going to find out that your audiences may prefer to hear about your products in different ways. And again, this is also the most effective way to think about the the messages and the campaigns that you create. And then lastly, we have this idea of relationship building, which we'll talk about with some of the models, and thinking about how people buy and how people engage in this lecture here. So thinking about needs, right? How can you develop those valuable relationships? Thinking about you as an individual. Who are those brands that have really, given some thought to who their audiences are, right? If you're an audience member, a consumer of that product or service, how have they, uh, you know, been able to attract you time and time again, right? How have they made sure that their message resonates with you as the audience member? So, think about that, right? Think about in your own lives, what kinds of brands, what companies, what organizations are the ones that um, through their, various campaigns on social media or television or what have you, have done a lot to make sure that their message resonates with you specifically. Um, and so to look at this, right, it's great to say that something was successful, but to have the data and that information available is even better, right? And so the article that I've posted in Blackboard explains how different social media platforms, if they do, how they measure reach and impressions. And so in the case here, we have a bit of a difference between these two, right? That reach and impressions tell us different things about the messages or the content that we've created and how people are engaging with it. And so, reach, as you can see here in this definition, is the number of individuals, right? Unique points of individuals who've been exposed to a message, right? It doesn't say anything about like where they've how they've acted or if they've done anything after seeing your message, but what is who is the audience and what is the quantifiable number of people that your message of your advertisement, your YouTube video, etc., has reached. Impressions is the total of number of times that message is displayed, whether or not it's been seen, right? So this is, this can be quantified as well. But where was that content shared? How many times was it displayed for the audience? And again, right, you can't determine from this information whether it was seen or not, but you can keep track of how many times that content was put out there in the hopes of reaching that audience. Next, we'll talk a little bit about effective frequency theory. So in marketing, right, when you are trying to get your message out there, and even just from us thinking about it from the consumer side as well, how many times do you as a consumer need to be exposed to a message before you do anything with that information, if you do anything at all? So the effective frequency theory is the idea that we need to be exposed several times to a message before we make a purchase, right? And when we go back to that PESO model of the paid, the earned, the shared, and oh gosh, the last one, the owned media, all of those different forms of media are there to persuade us to act, right? And which of those are the most persuasive? Is a traditional advertisement for a product going to be the most effective in persuading us? Are the reviews that we read online going to be the most effective? Are the shared retweets, likes, engagement, etc., going to be the things that persuade us? And so marketers and companies rely on all of those things because effective frequency theory tells us that it's not just like the one time you see that ad, but multiple times that you see it, you're more likely going to make a purchase. Whether that's the sponsored content that comes up on your Instagram feed, or the YouTube videos that you look up for reviews, or even a news article about the product. So all of those things work in different spaces to increase the frequency of how often we see it, and therefore increasing the likelihood that we're going to buy a purchase. This is not a perfect science. It's hard to kind of quantify it, but when we look at the variety of factors that come into play with how frequent we need to be, how often we need to be exposed to a message in order to do something about it, it can vary. So, in this case, right, depending on things like the message itself, right, what is it that you're trying to get out there? Who's your audience? The product itself or the service, and if there's competition. Think about political ads, aside from even like products and services, right? Think about political ads, how often those run during election years, how frequently we see those advertisements. And so, you can kind of think about it there as well, right? That if there's lots of repetition, lots of information out there, if it's coming to us in different spaces, that we are more likely going to, recognize or remember that individual. And I mean, obviously, the end goal for, we're talking politics, is to vote. But in the case of branding and marketing, that we're going to buy. So it works across a multitude of spaces, but it can be effective when employed all over and across many different media spaces. The AIDA model is a similar kind of process here, but looks at the several exposures, right, to a message. That it's not just one advertisement or one commercial that we see that gets us to do something, but we have to see it at least 3 times, right? So this is the argument for the AIDA model, is that we should have at least seen the advertisement 3 times, or the social media post, or the something that persuades us 3 times before we're going to buy the product itself. So the first exposure is to bring awareness. The second exposure is to arouse attention. The third, desire. And the fourth, after we've seen it 4 times, we're more likely going to buy whatever it is that the company is selling us. So if we're looking at this in terms of goals for a new smartphone, right? A company wants to market a new smartphone, and their goal for this is to generate some awareness and get some buzz going, getting people talking about it. If we break down where we see this happening, is that first attention step is going to create that ad showing a design, some advanced features, lots of technology. The ad itself should be visually appealing, something that grabs our attention, but also thinks about the target audience. If you're selling a sleek iPhone, for example, you may think about how you can emphasize the features, emphasize the clean lines, the user, how easy it is to use. Maybe there's lots of music involved in the ad. Maybe the celebrities are involved in some capacity, right? Lots of ways that you could garner attention for your product. The next step would be interest. So the audience has seen some of these ads. They think that it looks really cool. Those billboards look really awesome out on like 95 or something like that. But again, right, the audience doesn't know too much about the product just yet. But their attention has been captured. This is in the next step, you provide some more information about the smartphone's features. So maybe it's got a really good camera, it's got an extra long battery life, it's got lots of good security. Those are the kinds of things that we're now familiar with the product. You can tell us a little bit more about the specifics of the product itself. In this case, you want to make sure that the audience knows that these things are going to change your life, that you're going to enjoy using the phone. It's very user-friendly. And that information, of course, gets shared in other spaces as well, right? Maybe it's not the stuff you see on a big, colorful billboard or on the side of a bus, but you see that information on the website, right? People know about your product. Now they're headed to your website. Next, we have desire. So this is when you show the benefits of the phone, what it does to stand out against other competitors in the market. What does your phone do differently than others? How are people who already own how do people who already own the product use the product, right? How do they use the phone? What do they have to say about it? And of course, that's where some of that, the earned media comes in, where you get some reviews and some people giving some good feedback about the product and what they have to say. And that, again, showcases some desire. And then lastly, you have your action, right? And this is when you get people to do something. What is the call to action? Tell us to visit the website. Maybe there's some sort of discounts or accessories, et cetera, that can be thrown in to incentivize um, you buying this new product. So there are lots of ways this can work. And of course, in many different spaces, right? We're talking TV, we're talking social media, maybe print ads, websites. So it's across, right? It's that media convergence. It's across all of these different spaces to really have your product stand out in a competitive market. And that the hope by that fourth step is that people are going to buy your product. Moving on, we have what's known as the recency theory. And this is a little bit different, right? Because the AIDA model tells us that we have to have three moments of time where we are being exposed to that message before we start to think about acting. That the recency theory here tells us that the last exposure has the greatest impact on short-term sales. So when we see many, many messages, advertisements, social media, et cetera, that we're going to be most influenced by the most recent message that we've encountered. That, according to the recency theory, argues that that message is going to have an influence on the consumer's behavior and purchasing decision. So again, right, if your message is consistently out there and you have, you're sharing that message with a wide audience, that if there is a consistent presence and lots of exposure, that people are going to be more likely to, purchase your product or do business with your company if they've most recently seen an ad in their time of need, right? We've gone back to the big problem that needs to be solved, but audiences are looking to have problems solved. Customers are looking to have problems solved. Hopefully, right, the hope is that your product or service is there at that moment when we are looking to have these problems taken care of. The attribution model is a little bit different, but it looks to see which message is working the hardest, right? Which message is going to be most effective in getting people to move from the sort of desire stage to the action stage when they buy or engage or purchase your product or service. And so this is, we kind of look to see across the board which messages are being most effective in getting that return on our investment, but can tell us, right, which messages a consumer is exposed to on what channel, right? Which ones are the most effective? Is your social media content showing more action than the billboards and the TV commercials, right? How many times were those commercials seen versus how many times was a social media post engaged with? And making, kind of fine tuning that process to maximize how effective each of these message spaces is in getting people to act. And so there are several different kinds of attribution models. And this is how and of course the model that works or is most useful is going to vary from industry to industry, from company to company. But your last click attribution is the idea that you're giving credit to the last marketing interaction before the sale. So if I see an ad today for an iPhone on a YouTube video that I watch, right? It's the ad right before the YouTube video. And today is the day I go out and buy an iPhone. Last click attribution says that advertisement was the thing that pushed me into the action stage, right? To move me from desire to action. And that ad would be the thing that did is going to be attributed with the credit. Your first click attribution is where we give credit to the first marketing interaction. So something that introduced and attracted the user to the brand. So let's say it was that YouTube video and that advertisement on YouTube was the first time I'm seeing a commercial for an iPhone. Even if I spend days and days and days reading reviews and looking up product information and, looking at the website and scrolling and, finding out information. First click attribution says that it's still that advertisement that I watched on YouTube 2 weeks ago that will receive the credit for the purchase that I've made. Linear attribution will tell us that it's distributed across all of those interactions, right? So if I watch an ad on YouTube, if I see a commercial on TV, a billboard out on 95, uh, I don't know, a print ad in a newspaper, a social media post online, a review written by like a tech journalist. All of those, right? We're going to say that those were consistently reasons for why I decided at the end to purchase an iPhone. So each of them gets credit. My time delay attribution tells us that the ones that are closer to the time of the sale are the ones that get the most credit. So, if I saw my, the print billboard on 95 on Saturday and on Sunday, I saw, an ad on social media and then a TV commercial today. It doesn't matter what happened 2 weeks ago. What matters is the ones that were the last, little bunch of interactions right up until the time that I bought the iPhone would be the ones that get the credit for making that sale. And then lastly, we have our U-shaped attribution, which looks at credit for the first and last. So some credit is given to the instances in the middle, but those first and last are the ones that are the instances, right? The moments that receive the most credit for making that sale, right? That my attention was piqued after seeing, an ad of some kind for the iPhone. Maybe I did a whole bunch of research in the middle and then saw, one more YouTube commercial along the way. And then the next day I go to buy the iPhone. Those first two, the first and the last, are the ones that get that most credit. So as we think about all this, the audience impressions can tell us lots about the habits. We've talked about psychographics, we've talked about demographics and behaviors and preferences and things like that. And when we apply some of these theories, we can think about how the ways that we purchase or how we think about buying products can give some insight into just overall action and behavior. Of course, these all vary depending on industry, depending on products and services. And so you have to think about which way you would like to give credit to your marketing campaign habits or your marketing campaign strategies and how those impact consumer habits. And when we last look at that attribution model, it can be viewed differently. And thinking about, is that first ad most important? Is that last ad most important? Are they all important? Will help you kind of think about and strategize most effectively how to reach your audiences.